Premature celebrations started on the streets of Baghdad minutes after the radio broadcast. Thousands of rounds were fired into the air. One of the gunmen said they were doing it because the war was over. For a few hours, there was a lighter mood in Baghdad than there's been for a long while.
It's a very good step, and I think that USA has to think about it.
The unexpected announcement on Baghdad radio was the first indication Saddam Hussein has given that he's prepared to withdraw from Kuwait. It was, the broadcast said, to prevent what it called the vicious alliance of America, NATO and Israel from realizing its premeditated objectives. Anti-American and anti-Western feeling is very strong here after the attack on the air raid shelter at Al-Maria in western Baghdad. Mourners were there again this morning. Washington's rejection of Iraq's preconditions for a ceasefire and for withdrawal will enrage them even further. Despite the air raids, perhaps as a direct result of them, people here are talking about a fight to the finish. The men who've been going today to Baghdad's mortuary to try to identify their families talked a great deal of that. The scenes there are appalling. The building is overflowing and corpses have been left in its yard. All the people at the mortuary can think about is their grief and revenge.
And after dismissing the Iraqi peace offer as a cruel hoax, President Bush has seized on the chance to increase the pressure on Saddam Hussein. He says by attaching so many conditions to a withdrawal, Hussein has dashed the peace hopes of millions of his own people. And President Bush has called on the Iraqi people and military to take matters into their own hands. He says they can end the war by removing Saddam Hussein as their leader.
The statement came at dawn and took Washington by surprise. Within 2 hours, the White House expressed disappointment.
But it clearly contains conditions for Iraqi withdrawal from Kuwait. The United Nations Security Council resolutions are clear in their insistence that the withdrawal be complete and unconditional. Promises alone are not sufficient.
The War Cabinet convened and studied a full translation. The President, initially optimistic, said the statement was full of old conditions and new ones.
Regrettably, the Iraq statement now appears to be a cruel hoax. There is nothing new here, with the possible exception of recognizing for the first time that Iraq must leave Kuwait.
The bloodshed would stop, firstly, if there was a massive Iraqi withdrawal, and he said there was another way.
And that is for the Iraqi military and the Iraqi people to take matters into their own hands, to force Saddam Hussein, the dictator, to step aside and to comply with the United Nations resolutions.
The U.S. will not accept an Iraqi withdrawal from Kuwait that's linked to the Palestinian issue. The President believes that would give Saddam a political victory. The Defense Department is now studying intelligence data to see if there's any sign of a real Iraqi pullout. Until then, said one official, nothing will change. Allied troops have their orders. The President is now on his way to visit the factory that makes the Patriot missile. His spokesman said the more we look at the Iraqi statement, the worse it gets.
Visit to a factory in the northwest of England. Downing Street kept him informed by phone. At first, the Baghdad statement appeared hopeful, but later he dismissed it utterly.
I think it is a sham, most certainly, yes. It really doesn't seem to be a serious attempt. Rather than it having anything fresh, it seems to have added fresh conditions to those that existed before. He refers to Resolution 660 and not Resolution 678. And he must have known that the sort of proposals that appear to have come out of Baghdad are really for public presentation and in no sense a realistic attempt to reach a conclusion that could remotely have been acceptable to public opinion in the West or any of the Allies.
But the Labour leader believes there has been a major change in direction.
For the first time ever, the word withdrawal has been pronounced. I wouldn't put too much on it. I wouldn't try to build a whole structure or strategy on it. But I think that it is evidence that the United Nations policy is beginning to achieve success.
Those against the war from the start believe there should now be a ceasefire.
I find it unbelievably despicable that this afternoon the United States commanders should be once again ordering coalition forces into the air to once again go bombing targets in Iraq.
Tonight, Number 10 said there are no plans for a special war cabinet this weekend. Asked if there'd be further consultations, Downing Street said simply, about what?
The Kuwaitis' first reaction to the most hopeful news they'd heard in 6 months, but elation was soon tempered with skepticism.
I couldn't believe it. I'm not believing it till now. I think he's lying to us again. I won't believe it till I see it in my own eyes.
As the rumors gathered strength, thoughts turned to families still in occupied Kuwait.
He's telling the truth. It's good. I'm able to see my parents again.
As word spread rapidly through the community of some 6,000 Kuwaiti exiles in eastern Saudi Arabia, most had their doubts about Saddam's sincerity.
If the Iraqi government wants the bomb stopping, they should tell their soldier to get out from Kuwait.
We should be more careful about this, because Saddam, we don't trust in Saddam.
Senior Kuwaiti officials treat anything Saddam says with extreme caution.
We want to make sure that he means what he announced first, and the second thing that we want to guarantee the safety and to our civilian people inside Kuwait.
Allied soldiers like Paul Hughes from Wolverhampton were equally wary about Saddam's latest surprise.
The guy just don't stick to his word. Yeah. I mean, would you trust him?
For airmen and soldiers, there was no change in orders.
Looks like the pilots don't believe it's over.
Well, we're not gonna downgrade anything until we see it. We got to see it to believe it.
Certainly, there was no sign at all of the Allies dropping their guard.